Hi, everyone. I'm here with Paul Siemms. How do you say your last name? I should know
It's
that.
actually just pronounced Sims. Everybody kind of struggles with it, but the E silent.
Alrighty. I'm here with Paul Sims, a member of the community, and we're doing a Learn with Me today. Paul posted a video he created on the site, and I was amazed by it. And also, I'm a huge fan of Planet of the Apes too. So, I mean, I'll show my age, but the original with Charlton Heston was the shit, to use
Yeah,
a phrase, right? Um,
that's the one that kind of sets everything up for me. It's just like when I saw it, I think back to that, and it's like that's the ultimate science fiction movie of all time for me.
It really is. And I mean, I was a kid when I saw it. I mean, it was on television quite a bit, but do you know what year it was made? I don't even know. Was it the 70s?
I think it was early '70s, probably late '60s, early '70s. Anyway,
Yeah. And that bombshell reveal at the end with the Statue of Liberty. Whoa. I remember the first time I saw it and I was blown away by it. So anyway, Paul, thanks for joining us. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about your work and how you're using AI to generate video. Um, we have a pretty large community here of we're just about 600 members, but agency presidents, creatives, data people. So I think what's great about your post was you were hands-on, like learning, and we can share that with the community for sure. Anyway, let's give me a background review, your experience in video production and who you've worked with in your career, and set us up with that.
okay, so really my career is broken down into two parts, and I think what might interest everybody is the fact that I'm kind of a jack of all trades in the business. I'm a producer, director, cameraman, motion graphic designer, script writer. I've kind of done all through my career, and the first 20 years, I guess, was kind of all in the broadcast industry. I
Okay.
worked for a company called Pyman Studios in Mississauga. So we did lots of live, lots of sports programming at the time. The Leafs this week, Ringside on the American Hockey League, Score Golf, Golf the World. We did some lifestyle programming, a show called Beer TV, which was one of my favorites. Getting to travel around the world and doing that. A show called Mondo Condo. There was commercials, infomercials,
Wow.
plenty of live production stuff. And then the second part of my career is my own company, which I started in about 2008, I think it was. Yeah, so about 16 years now, kind of going on that one, which is still exciting, but now kind of more the corporate side of things, still doing lots of like commercials, social media campaigns, how-to videos, live streaming, award shows,
Wow.
that type of thing. So it's exciting.
Well, that's so varied too. That's really excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, and that's great experience. My video production experience has just been like a typical agency guy, just here and there and some bits in. So I never really had much hands-on experience, but I did shoot a fair number of spots of big brand spots for agencies. So it's more complex than a lot of people think. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people involved. It's generally, a fair amount of money and can be very complex at times. But you seem like you've done a fair amount of big variety of stuff too. Good for you.
Like, right.
Yeah. Okay. So, what started your journey with AI? Like, we talk about that on the community a lot because everyone's got a different way in, but how did you get started with using AI?
Well, I think that I think people look at AI right now kind of as kind of from the time kind of ChatGPT kind of came in and moving forward. But I've started in Avid and then moved into Adobe, and a lot of people don't really realize is they've actually had some tools already in there right? The kind of more behind the scenes, but
Yes.
so using that type of thing, they're remixed with the audio, you know, generative fill just on its own has been in there for a while. So that first experience kind of came through a client, and you see this on a lot of YouTube videos these days already, where people are they shoot a part like this part of the video, and then they change all the background, right? And they make
Right.
this nice background, but um, you always go into a client's place to do interviews type of thing, and they always say, I want to shoot this in the lobby. It's a great background to do this, but there's always something in that background that you don't like, and you want to change it. So, I showed a client, basically using generative fill and changing the background, and they're all blown away by it. But then, all of a sudden they start, and this is where I think the first part about AI comes about is, they loved it. Like I showed them what they could do, and they're blown away by it. But then all of a sudden she starts thinking about it, and trust is the biggest thing for in most companies. And so she sat there and said, you know what? As much as I love this, we can't use this because, we're a small firm. People are going to walk into this lobby and say, hey, this isn't the background that was there, right? So it's like they're losing the trust of their clients already just on something really simple. But, that's the kind of the thinking, I think, where people really have to sit down and talk with their clients about what they want to do with AI before they start using it behind the scenes. I think the second part of it was, I used it in actually part of an award show, and I was doing a vignette with um, one of the awardees, and it was they didn't have a lot of footage. So one of the things that he talked about was, I grew up in Trinidad, and as a 10-year-old child, right? So I created this image, basically using AI, and
Right.
showed a 10-year-old from behind, looking down on the city, and it was like, the gentleman didn't mind, but it was like, will this pass the test? Kind of like when it's actually out in the award show, and it was funny because the one cameraman turns to me and he goes, where'd you get that shot of him when he was 10 years old? And I'm sitting there going like, okay, like, did it
Right.
pass the test? Did it not pass the test? And then little did I know there was another guy from Trinidad actually on the shoot. And he goes, yeah, that looks great. But it's like, I don't really know that spot. And it's like, okay. It's like, so all of a sudden it was like a test, but it passed. And that was kind of the neat thing, that on that side of things.
Well, and that's in many ways that's what's confusing or scary for a lot of people about AI. The whole aspect of disinformation or not trusting what you see, but at the same time, it's being used everywhere. I mean, the Coca-Cola spot from Christmas that was fully AI generated really shook up a lot of marketers because it was very sophisticated, and at the same time, is this legit to use? And just to roll back to your point about it being around for a while, I was involved in the digital out of home business for a long time. Uh, Digital signage networks and that sort of thing. And we did a lot of different brand work, creative for that. Like Glance Media, but After Effects was used extensively with some of the, very complex tools. I mean, this I'm dating myself, but the renders would take overnight because a lot of it was 3D done and textures applied and that sort of thing, which is really not AI per se, but it precursors to where we are, right? All right, wonderful. So we're talking about this because you posted this video of this 3-minute video, and I'm dying to talk about it. But what in your video production work, did you start using text to image or did you go, I mean, talk to me about the tools that you started to work with.
So text to image is kind of where I started, but I think I'll jump back just a little bit because what really started this for me was the clients kind of keep mentioning it kind of over like in their like in conversations, right? And it's just like there's one project that we've been trying to do with a client, and the budget's just
Right.
too high,
Yeah.
and we can't get it down to a level to which they could kind of do it. And and this gentleman happens to be very involved in essence of what's going on out there right now, and he goes, there must be an AI tool that can make this happen. Let's get it to work and type of thing. And there is some things that will help, but my concern, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a bit, is especially in the video side of things, the continuity between one shot to the next, and
Right.
that is still an issue, and it's going to be kind of the biggest issue I can see at this point in time moving forward. But it did start with the kind of the text to image part of things, and it's just trying to look at things and then trying to do like a deep dive into all these different things. So I just felt at the time I needed to kind of do a deep dive into AI as much as I can, so that my clients are going to ask questions, and I need to know answers to that. I need to know kind of budgeting, how I'm going to budget these things out, and it's just so that's why I needed to kind of get involved and do this.
Well, and it's such a moving target, especially if you're dealing directly with clients as the tools evolve and change. I mean, for me, the AI revolution was really ChatGPT to start, right? But then I signed up for a Midjourney account and I ran the Discord server on I have a big iMac over here. And honestly, Paul, it was mesmerizing to me. I just let it run all day and read the prompts, and there was like, this fascinating universe of different uses of Midjourney. And the results were so dramatic, and the prompts could be so elaborate. You know what I mean, with focal length and styles and everything. So, but I'm not a creative per se, and even I manage creative campaigns. But and I've done a Learn with Me session on using Midjourney and prompting. But when I started to play around with the text to video tools, you know, I ran right into what you're talking about. Like a similar prompt would generate something completely different the next time I used it, or the whole seven fingers kind of two toes kind of thing happened. And in your video with the Planet of the Apes, it was so consistent. The style and everything just seemed so consistent from shot to shot. That must have been a challenge.
It was, and and for me, when I still look at it, I'm still not 100% happy with all of it,
Right.
but I do. But it was trying to get the consistency is the part, and even made more difficult by myself because uh, the whole premise of doing this video is first of all is I wanted to do it basically free of charge.
Right.
In essence, like I didn't want to pay for the AI programs. So I use lots and lots of different tools to make it happen under the free policies type of thing. And so there was challenges just on that to make it happen. But at the same time, I learned so much about different programs because
Yeah.
the same prompt doesn't necessarily generate the same video, the same image, just even using a different program. Sometimes you get something better, sometimes it's
Right.
cartoony, so knowing all the different applications is really important to kind of in making this stuff because maybe there's something that you want to do, but the one program that you're working with just won't create it for whatever reason.
Right. Right, right. And we'll talk about the programs in more specific for sure in a few minutes. But um, it's also like you were talking about just learning as you go, because really everything's so new here. There's no documentation on that sort of thing. And even I was so excited when Sora came out, but I think I used my free clips or my free tokens or whatever, like within a few hours. And I didn't even really create much of any value per se. But where are we now, like in terms of text to video? Where, like, I mean, what you generated was so slick and sophisticated. My question is basically like, how many hours did that represent of your work too?
Okay, so this my whole journey into this kind of started, I would say, kind of 8 weeks ago, where I
Okay,
really started to dive into this. And the first 4 weeks was kind of more and less testing the software and really dealing with the text to image first.
right,
I don't think you can actually in Go text to video. To
right,
me, there's so many issues. First of all, with the text to image side of things,
right,
text to video. I think you gotta for me with you creating this program, it was text to image first, and then basically creating a storyboard, a sense, and then taking those images and starting to make the video side of things happen. So using the image to video as opposed to just straight text to video.
right. So you started text to image, so and then you got some images that you could flesh out with a storyboard, and then you looked at the way the videos could be created, which I mean that's the it seems like the only way that you could possibly do this. But what? So tell me what applications did you use most frequently, or kind of in the bulk of the work?
Yeah, just before we move on there, I think I'd like to just jump back a little bit too,
Sure.
because the first, I think this is what people kind of find interesting is kind of the first 4 weeks, kind of when I did this, the first 4 weeks of testing is, um, the whole issue for a lot of it, like, you can put anything into the prompt and you get a kind of nice, pretty picture and stuff like
Right.
that, right? But it was like kind of like how do I describe, like, I know the shot I want, but learning how to describe that shot
Yeah.
was really key. It's like, you not just have to focus on the shot, but it's like, what's the background details? What's he wearing? What's all the little different elements? There was so much more involved in that, right? So I actually started by just taking a whole bunch of pictures that I liked kind of off the internet, and I was like, now how would I describe that? you know,
Ah,
and kind of put it in the words. Now they've come about now already with kind of reverse engineering. So there's a couple of programs out there that'll do that for you, and that's kind of interesting too because you kind of get to see then how the AI is looking at images, and
right,
it's very neat because even when it does do that, the the similarity or almost like the exact same image that kind of gets spit back out when you put their prompt back in
right,
it is like it's scary. It's like that's the image, right? So
right, right.
knowing how the model works, that's really crucial. The second part to it is when you start doing images. Yes, you get a pretty picture, but you got to learn how to get like emotion into the pictures. And
Right.
I'm hoping that when people watch the Planet of the Apes stuff, at least I was able to create a little bit of emotion with every single shot. That was kind of
Yeah.
one of the keys that I was trying to get to happen. The
Well, and
other
not because not every shot is set up for motion, as you obviously learn, right? I'm curious now. So when you, just that learning must have been valuable, watching seeing what the language was that worked best as you started. How long were the prompts? Were they pretty extensive, because it's funny with Midjourney too, sometimes the prompts are relatively short, and sometimes it's a Dickens novel, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the prompts are that crazy long.
Right.
And it's different because when you use like Adobe Firefly works completely opposite than
Right.
than the other ones. Adobe Firefly wants like the shortest prompt and to create the best image. you know
Really?
so and the other thing you'll also learn is the more complicated the image,
Yes.
the less resolution you seem to get because
Uh,
it's trying to calculate so many
yeah.
things. So it's
Yeah.
kind of simplifying it sometimes helps. And it's amazing how like one word can just like change a whole prompt. Like I found
Right.
when you talk about the emotion side of things, like just adding the word angry in front of a prompt changes
Yeah.
the whole prompt. So
Yeah.
adding just that type of emotion type of word in front of it is really interesting. I think the other part to it is, when you talk about um, a pose or something like that, you get a lot of standing shots with people, but you're doing more than just standing. It's like, what are you doing kind of when you're standing there?
Right.
You're leaning, you're making a gesture, and it's that the kind of that little more important details that helps you get a better result.
Wow. I've heard it described in many ways, but someone, I can't remember who, I think it was Connor from U of Penn, described AI as kind of an emerging subspecies of human, like an emerging species or an emerging human being, but not a human being. But I found that fascinating because like you said, just one word. It is you are communicating with language, but like as you went through this, you were describing what kind of motions you wanted in the shot or what kind of faces and that sort of thing. It must have been fascinating, and you probably learned an amazing amount just by seeing the tweaks from simple, word changes.
Yeah, and there's other things too there that I discovered is like one thing if you do motion graphics, liquids are always kind of a
Yeah.
really tricky area. So, that was one of the areas I put the test early is kind of just, how would AI handle liquids in motion? And some of that they still struggle with immensely. So like, to put somebody underneath a waterfall or a shower type of
Yeah.
thing, you know, does their hair come out wet? Do you get beads of water on them? All the applications really struggle. Some of them came out with some results, but it took a lot of, there's cheats and that type of thing you have to kind of do to create this type of thing. A person sweating, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
I added a little bit of water into the Planet of the Apes scenes. Like there's the one scene kind of where it's a little bit raining and, the fur's wet, and I think that kind of added to it. The other part to it is camera control. Like you'll see
Yeah.
camera control is now being added to a lot of the applications, but it's just like even saying like a wide or full body shot doesn't always get you there. Sometimes you have to say, so what I noticed, like, if you all of a sudden you talk about their feet or something like that in the prompt, it just forces the shot to go wider. And it's also not just the language. Sometimes it's just the order.
Right.
Whatever you put first. So if you talk about the landscape, as I did a lot of times in the Planet of the Apes one, you get a wider shot, right? And then talk about what's happening in it, as opposed to, here's the apes, type of thing, and then this is what the landscape looks like. Gives you a tighter
Right.
shot. So it's just flipping the order of the prompt. Sometimes the prompt's fine. It's just flipping the order, and gives you a whole different result.
Fascinating, fascinating. And that's the only way to, and that's another thing about these AI tools. The only way to really learn them is to use it, right?
Definitely.
Like yeah. I mean, it's changing so fast. All right, so now specifically about the tools, what did you use for the bulk of the video? And also, I'm very interested in how you kept a consistent style and look. I mean, I've struggled with that, and I'm just playing around for the most part. But for marketers who are trying to use these tools, that's super important, right?
Yeah, and I think again, I made it more difficult on myself because I was using so many applications in
Okay.
essence. Um, but I used from probably about 40 different applications, to be honest.
Wow.
And I was still using different. As I was mentioning to you before we even get started, there seems to be a different application every day. So you try and still other ones to see kind of what they're doing. But I was using Dream, Enhance AI, Google Labs, something called Atubo, Night Cafe, Pika, Leonardo, Luma Labs,
Wow.
Kriya, Vidu. There's a really great one in essence, like in the essence of the video side of things. I think the best ones were Sky Reels, Vidu, um, and Kriya. And Kling did well too, but the
Right.
problem being the business model, right? And so when you talk about Runway, I couldn't even really use Runway because it's like, you get on it and it's like you're out of credits
Yeah.
and you can't do it. And I think this is one of the biggest thing is like the business models of these companies. I think they really have to reevaluate what they've come up with here
Yes.
because us as a creative content person, we need to test this stuff out. We need
Right.
to know it's viable. We can't go out there and say to a client, yeah, let's go use AI, but it's like you need to know, you need
Yeah.
to be able to control the AI in essence
Right.
of the shot. It's like I always sit there and go like, if you're a motion graphics designer and you're used to using things like templates, I always tell people, it's fine to go use a template, but you better know how to deep dive down into that template and change something because the client's going to go, I like everything but that little thing right there.
Right. Right.
So you better know how to get down into that template and to change that thing. And it's kind of like that with AI because they're going to come back, and this is the biggest problem. They're going to come back and want to change. And so
Sure.
one thing that I can recommend to people, if you're doing this, I think, so I started a prompt journal. And
Ah,
so, and this is what I think helped with the continuity.
right.
I kept a journal of all the different things I was doing and it kept the prompts. So even when I moved from program to program, I'm still taking the same prompt. I wasn't changing the prompt necessarily
Right. Right.
or modifying that prompt to a certain degree to get the result that I wanted.
Well, and then you were more likely to determine how that program was going to work or not work for you, or like with the upside or downside to it. But that's very smart. But back to your business model, you're in production. You're like, I want control over the camera here and here. Like you have very specific requests. And some of these apps are so new, or just, the UI is either complex or not there or whatever. I mean, y- they want you to pay however much for so many tokens or something, but you can't even do a proof of concept without running through all of those, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so and the early AI projects that I saw, and this is another reason why I had to get in there myself and do it, is when you see the stuff that was put out there is yeah, they're nice pictures and nice then they're kind of just stitched. It's kind of like what I call a demo reel almost in essence,
Yeah.
right? But it's not really using the way my clients and myself work with creating a project, right? They have an involvement in it. They have a say in what is
Sure.
happening in there. So you need to really kind of again, be able to understand everything that's kind of happening in that image. So, so when you talked about the four fingers type of thing and or the five, seven, and eight fingers thing, that's a problem. And sometimes it's the eyes or something like
Yeah.
that. So sometimes, so that was another part of the process was taking some of the images because some of the images I liked right away, but
Right.
then take it back into Photoshop and let generative fill kind of take a second stab at just a little part of it, fix the
Right.
hands, fix the face, So it's learning like, okay, so we did that, how can I fix something if the client needs to change something? And it was kind of that thought process of how to make that happen.
Well, and I know I've heard this from multiple marketers or professional creatives starting to use these tools. The logo treatment in text can be a frustrating, hellish, you know what I mean? Like even like correcting a logo or in a prompt, it will ignore it or screw it up again. Um, uh, so so back to marketers and like real production, you can't go through all this effort and just have the logo screwed up too, who were not treated properly, right? All right, well, I mean, that's a real puzzle if you were using that many programs, but obviously a prompt journal makes a lot of sense. And then what did you build the final file in? Do you just like, was it just assembling like all the clips at some point or?
Yeah, I did take the final clips and bring it into Adobe, into Premiere, and do a final edit. But the music, the sound effects, even the narration was all AI. So I used
Uh,
so that's the beauty of it a little bit because the key with this one here is I'm in control. I have I have the final say. It's not like a client had the final say in it.
right, right,
So I was able to kind of control and do what I wanted to kind of make happen. But the beauty about things like the Chat GPT and stuff like that is you don't even really necessarily all the time have to have it all figured out, right?
Right.
You know, you kind of put in, I want to do this, and this. It spits something out, and so the original concept all came from the part, that man was created from ape, basically, right? So that's kind of
Right.
where it started, and then as kind of we worked it out, it was like, I came up with this thing that I felt like Dr. Zayas or an ancestor of Dr. Zayas had to, kind of be the one kind of telling the story. So that started to happen. That's where you get the campfire thing happening from.
Right.
And so then ChatGPT rearranged that type of thing. And then, we talked about the Statue of Liberty type of thing, right? I said, well, I kind of really need that type of shot at the end. So we came up with the picture of the thinker and the statue type of thing.
Right.
It had to include, things like the Forbidden Zone, the human doll, So we tried to bring all that stuff back in and just have fun with that type of thing.
Fascinating, fascinating. So you also must have, what helped you keep the style together from app to app? Did you, I mean, because it looks really seamless to me. It's one of the things that jumped out at me. How was that just source images went with to the AI programs to get started, or was that something you finessed somehow?
No, well, thank you, first of all. It really just, it was just, I guess, kind of the storyboard, I guess. Those are all
Yeah.
the images created by me. So then, just, I went through it and kind of kept kind of massaging it type of thing. So, um, like the first draft actually when it came out, this could be really interesting to people as well. Is just that you know it was lacking in essence. There just wasn't enough emotion stuff like that. Like I always explain to people, when you're watching a TV series like a police series, every show needs a running scene, and you
Yeah.
or like conflict or something like that. So that's where kind of I tried it towards the end. There's a lot more of the battle type stuff. I wanted the apes running. There's the explosions going off where and it's interesting because what happens is first of all, getting the running shot was difficult in essence of it's a 5 second clip, so it was always slow mo. I
Right.
couldn't really get a real speed shot, and 5 seconds really isn't enough to kind of
Right.
create something to speed it up. So that was a little bit difficult. The scene where the chimpanzee jumps down onto the other gorilla, um, AI just doesn't like that. It doesn't want it doesn't handle two images coming together well at
Right.
all. So
Right.
at first, there were some very laughable moments because the ape would come down and then he kind of miss him and he hit the ground, and
Right.
the other guy would be still standing there, kind of like looking over, like, "What are you doing?" type of thing, right? So I actually had to find a point where I finally got one image where it actually looked like he landed on top of him. So it was that part there, but he actually melded into him.
Right.
So I actually just edited on that. So I said, okay, I got that part. Now I'll do the fight scene as something separate, right? So that was kind of a trial and learn type of thing, right? And then I ended up with a good fight scene that I felt, a little softer on the resolution, but because the program that created that just happened to be a little bit less resolution than the others. It's interesting because, and we'll probably talk about this maybe even a little bit more later. Is one of the struggles with this is so being a person from on the Adobe side of things, if I was using an Adobe program right now to do this, they have their Firefly program, none of this would have been obtainable because of their policies. They won't
Right.
allow guns or anything
Right.
that in their rendering. So this whole video that I did wouldn't even be obtainable if I was using just that program alone.
Well, and it obviously is a significant, it's so there's so much gray area. And I mean, I guess a lot of people wouldn't see it, but but what's happening with AI too, and I think this is what generally makes a lot of people anxious about it one way or another, especially in the business senses, there's so much gray area in terms of copyright and usage and rules and guidelines that first, it's kind of impossible to know what is current and what is not and what's legit. But it also is very much like we need to be involved so that we know where the guidelines are and the guardrails should be. But it's still so early on in many ways. Like, look what you're running up to, that you couldn't have any of a lot of the action sequences because of that, right? And back to the physical world, I've seen it multiple times again, but even, I did a video generate just in Sora with a chef cutting using a knife, and instead of the knife being in his hand, it was actually his hand. Like Sora actually made his hand into a knife. But I'm not surprised that it wouldn't, it doesn't know what to do when you put two large ape creatures falling onto each other, how you resolve that. Now, will the models get that? Sure. But it's also a moving target, and you don't know how sophisticated these are until you start seeing the outputs, right?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. You mentioned the cooking thing. So one of the other things that I did with one of the projects leading in was using some storyboarding stuff, and I'm trying to find the name of the one I used, but it's interesting because the storyboard side of things will some of that really helps. So there's like storyboard programs. One of them, I think it was called Catalyst AI,
Okay.
and I can get the other one. I just can't think of it right away.
Right.
But it really did better kind of with the animated characters type of thing as opposed to reality. So one of the
Right.
things I did in essence to your cooking thing is I tried to create like a 1 minute cooking opening, and it was so interesting because just to give it a pinch of salt ended up being a full plate of salt by the end of it because it just kept dropping salt the whole clip. It wouldn't stop. So it's like trying to find stops or find the solutions for things like that. Like how do you just get it to do a pinch of salt and then
Yeah.
continue on type of thing.
Now, when you're writing prompts for some of the action sequences, did you get to the point where you were specifying times or length of things, or you know what I mean? Like, or would you just keep working until you got what you wanted? I don't know.
I'm not totally certain where what
Like,
you're looking for there.
like if you were doing a shot with some of the apes walking through the forest or something, would you say how long it was going to be, or would you just generate it and then edit it at that segment?
No, and actually, like, so if you remember in the trailer, when they're in the kind of the ruined town and they're looking through crates and getting guns and stuff like that, um, I started playing more around with like, what happens if I take the ape and have him walk out screen right, or I want him to walk out of the frame of the shot. And what ended up happening was kind of a bit of a fluke, which I really liked. There's the one scene where he was supposed to walk out screen right, but he walks to the right, and then there's this whole other part of the
Um,
set that
and it
kind of came
panned,
out
it
that
panned.
another ape was standing there. He walks by him, and it was like
Oh,
so it kind of ended up being a little bit of a fluke, and that's kind of the beauty sometimes too of AI. It's like
right.
you know even when you're putting things in the chat GPT and you're talking about scripting, it's like when I say you don't have all the ideas, sometimes it just throws something out there and go, oh, okay, yeah,
Right.
there's something to that. Maybe that's where I should go with this, right?
So did it actually pan to this new area and reveal the
Yeah,
other
it
eight?
revealed that
Wow.
so that one shot where it kind of pans over, and the fact I think it would made it even more beautiful is it just didn't pan over to a different area. There was another ape standing there, and
Right.
he walked right by him, and I was like, That's fantastic," there was another scene though. Like sometimes it just doesn't work. It's like so there's the picture there of the tank in the one scene, and all I really wanted was the turret to move and not the tank to
Right.
move. But I couldn't get a component of the tank to move without anything else. So that was a
Independently, you
struggle.
mean, like the turret? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the turret was just supposed to move a little bit, but then it wanted to move the wheels, and that didn't look good. And
Right, right.
so I just wanted the one guy kind of standing out in front. But so the shot didn't really do exactly what I wanted, but it still looked good that I used it in the shot in the video.
Wow. Yeah, what was impressive to me so much was it's like obviously you had a vision for it. But I think again, the basic rules of good video production, storyboarding and the using the tools to help with the story is amazing. A lot of the conversations on me and AI too is like people serendipitously understanding that AI is really a way to assist your work, not replace it, right? Like enhance it. And I see this more and more where people are talking about ChatGPT and Claude and DeepSeek, and sharing talking to it more as an assistant, with the models, and that's a great way to approach it, I think, especially with there's so much. I mean, there's not much AI literacy outside of enthusiasts in so many ways. It takes people to self-motivate and educate themselves, especially when you're using as many platforms as you.
Yeah, I think what people really need to realize too is like, if you've been using ChatGPT, don't stop there because there's like Gemini,
Yeah.
there's a new one called Grok 3 that,
Yes.
and, what I always ask them, first of all, what you really need to know, like when you start using these, is ask the application what's their database and can they access the internet for real-time live data. But also
Right.
check their data because there's mistakes all the time
Of
in
course.
stuff,
And
right?
and
So
and and it's a real challenge for people. Also, there are ways to use tools that are give you much more power without even kind of a lot of people don't realize. For example, the custom instructions on paid OpenAI accounts, where you can put in, your background, your interests, your focus, your stuff, that sort of thing. I've done that. Mine's got to be 400 or 500 words long, and it comes back to assist you in ways that people don't really appreciate fully. And you can change it, but also we have done quite a few webinars on building custom GPTs. And now there's projects and there's all different ways to approach it depending upon the platform. But yes, it's the ability to upload documents, start a project, and now with deep research, I'm thrilled to start playing with it. I haven't done it yet because I'm not paying the $200 a month for OpenAI at this point, but I'm very excited about it, and I've seen some amazing videos on it. So I have been using the reasoning models, and it's the kind of thing that the revolution here in AI is, too many people kind of view it as one-dimensional or like a trick pony kind of thing, but it really is a profound change, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you because it's one thing to generate a little clip or a little clip, but it's another thing to create 3 or 4 minutes of consistent storytelling with the same look and feel, and with apes in motion in jungles. So so, so it's an amazing accomplishment. It truly is, and I'm sure, professionally, what are you hearing from others in the field about this from your colleagues in terms of this? I'm focused on marketing in many ways and creative, but I've been involved with a lot of video production over the years. Well, what are you hearing from your colleagues?
I think mostly there's a whole anxiety thing too for a
Right.
lot of people, kind of like you're talking about, and clients mentioning it as well. So a lot of it's just kind of discussion and stuff like that. I keep uh, as exciting as this is, and it's also scary at the same time. And I keep thinking about, um, where will the studios be? Where are cameras going to be? Are we going to need them? All the great, wonderful people to help me assist in different projects, um, will they be required? Because you're just gonna have so many other avenues with this stuff. Once they sort out a lot, there's a lot to sort out. It's still, especially on the video side of things. I think one of the interesting things that you might see interesting out of this is when I first started the video side of things in the image to video, the first couple of weeks I was really struggling with it.
Yeah,
I didn't think I was able to even produce anything. I was like,
right.
okay, we're not there. But
Yeah,
within the next couple of weeks, it was like there was a release, and all of a sudden it was like,
yeah.
my goodness, this is awesome. It's like, I can't believe how much it grown. So just in a short period of time, how quickly it changed. So you sit here and go, where are we for a year from now with this?
Right.
And
Right.
it,
And that's important. I mean, on the one hand, these are as bad as the tools are going to get in many ways, where we are. But even just whatever, a year ago or something, just the change from Mid-Journey 5 to 6 was dramatic, right? And it actually got a lot of attention, and at least dorks like you and I, but those tools are evolving so quickly. But on the video side, especially, how much computing power is needed to generate like high def AI content? A lot, right?
there's a lot. And, one of the interesting things I think, and this isn't going to be for everybody, but,
Right.
I'm also trying to run AI. I've been working with a program called Pinocchio, which you might or may not know. It basically it's creating like a virtual machine on your computer, and I'm
Okay.
running AI applications in that. One you
Okay.
can one you can do it for free. I like the fact that my stuff's not out there necessarily in the cloud or on somebody else's computer base.
Right, right,
So it's trying to figure out what do I need machine wise
right.
to do that, and to run stuff on my own computer. So that's a whole other experiment going on in the background.
Well, and yes, and again, like the speed of development is so fast on both the hardware and the software side that it is almost makes it a full-time job just to kind of keep testing and looking and applying yourself. Like, for example, like the Adobe tools are powerful. I've seen some amazing stuff. But then you run into what you just mentioned is the restriction on use or that are just bolted away. Like we can't do that, period. So we're in for a fascinating change. And in terms of the studios side, I mean, if anything is steady, it's just the constant change. And I do think people like yourself who have been in video production for a long time it'll be up to, people like yourself to learn these tools and apply them in ways that still make business sense, right? But I can remember what I did. We shot a commercial for Interac years ago when I was on the agency side, and it was the little truck that used to be Interac that would drive around, and they shot it with like a just a mirrored ball and when we shot the commercial, it was a mirrored ball in the shots, moving or static. And I mean, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars of post-production to have it zoom around. So I mean, here we are now. Will AI enable great creative without those kind of budgets?
I think you mentioned AI as a tool, and I think that's kind of what you have to think about it is right
Right.
now. And I even my son has just started audio engineering down at Harris, and when we were in there, I was kind of nervous about him moving forward in a career with AI coming out. And I talked to John Harris there, and he said exactly that. It's like AI is a tool. He said, when streaming came out, everybody thought, oh, that's the end of audio, and whatnot.
Right.
And it wasn't. It was just another tool. Jobs changed, things changed. The jobs kind of changed. So that's kind of where I see the video side of things. It's like, there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to have to readapt and kind of find a way to survive in this industry if that's what they really want to do.
Yeah, I mean it's all, and for marketers as well, I mean I've been in the on the marketing education side, and there are ramifications, but if you view it as a tool, and also I have this kind of stock line I use lately, like we're living through the revenge of the liberal arts majors, is what I say, because you know AI, the models have been trained on the English language, scraped, you call it whatever you want, free or scraped or stolen or whatever. That's how they've been trained. So the better communicator you are, the more nuance for language. And you saw it, I'm sure, in yourself, that in terms of prompting, like you were saying before, just a few words or the order of words would change the results completely because the models are trying to decipher what you want from them by the language.
For sure. And one thing I didn't mention, I mentioned about going out and finding images and then kind of figuring out how to describe them. Also, take a look at other people's stuff too, and like look at their prompt. And you'll find like sometimes like one word or something like that that can make a huge difference in what you're doing. And that
Mm.
it's amazing, just like uh, you know, putting the word hyper realistic
Yeah,
in front of everything just seems to change everything and make it that
yeah,
much more
yeah.
real.
Yes, I was doing that in Midjourney for version 6, and that was an argument against AI text to image, or for early on, was that everything was kind of Pixar-y, you know what I mean, cartoony.
Mm.
But we're moving past that quickly, and your video is clearly animated and animated characters, but it doesn't look cartoony to me at all, really. And to get that consistent style across is something that marketers are going to have to learn how to do, no matter what tools they use.
You just made me think of something else that was really kind of for this particular video that I did. A lot of times, people when they're doing their working with the programs with text to image and stuff like that, they use the realistic
Yeah,
part of it. And to me, in a lot of the cases, it looked like stock video being or
yeah,
stock pictures being readjusted. The neat part was, and especially in Firefly, where I did get some really good images, was when I changed that from kind of the realistic to the art side of the prompt. So you had a choice of either, I think it says photo or art. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But by choosing the art, it's like all of a sudden the language model takes everything and kind of blends it and actually does a little bit more thinking than just grabbing like a stock
right,
photography shot. So
right.
that's something. If you're not getting the results that you're looking for, try and maybe choose the art side of a language model, and maybe you get some better result.
Well, and that's important for people getting started, because I'm sure, I mean, I'm sure this is the case, that there are lots of people trying to use these tools and getting frustrated quickly, right? For whatever reason. I mean, I think you were tenacious about it, and you were very structured in your approach, but I'm sure there's lots of people that are frustrated by
Well,
this.
and that's where I talk about the business model, where a lot of people are going to get upset because the amount of waste
Yeah,
within doing this. Video production right now, the waste is probably, except for like I say the like Sky Reels and the Halo, I think it's called AI. They seem to be generate some pretty good consistent imagery, usable video production. But other
right.
than that, it's 50% at least within a waste with it. And, so you're eating up your credits like crazy.
Well, and also that's the time, you're all that time, you know what I mean? If you're not getting value, if you're not getting output you can use, that's time wasted as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I don't want to beat up on Adobe, but Adobe has kind of been my backbone of all my software. And so we had a lot. I had to basically get on the phone with them and get something where I could try out their stuff, because it basically gave me 2 credits for
Yeah.
Firefly video generation. I'd been waiting since December to get in on this, and then when I did get to use it, there was nothing. Like it didn't produce any good result. Now Adobe's going to catch up. I guarantee it because that's just who they are. But one thing I did though, I mentioned though that this week though, I did end up with some better results after watching another tutorial from somebody. He was dealing with kind of animated character type stuff, more fantasy type things,
Yeah.
and I was able to get some results that worked. They're not ready for real time people and stuff like that because the eyes are breaking up, bad teeth, bad
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
parts and stuff like that. So they'll catch up, but without you know me getting the kind of more credits and stuff like that from them just
Yeah.
to kind of play around with it, I would never know that. And so you need, and this is where I think there's a lot of applications I won't even ever go use because I wasn't able to try them out. I don't know if they'll work. I'm not going to pay you money to know if they're not going
Right.
to work.
Well, and also it's not the kind of thing like because of who you are and what you're looking to do. And if you're a creative director at a big ad agency or video production or run a studio, you're busy. You have a certain amount of time. The ability to just, spend 2 days trying to play around with a new platform to see if it'll get something worthwhile is frustrating, but also not worth your time. And then yes, I think the monetary aspect of it is crazy. I mean, I told you with Sora, I was so excited about Sora, like everyone else. We had waited so long. And then like it was 9 o'clock at night and I had used all my tokens. Well, it was really talk about turning me around. I was really pissed off because I hadn't generated anything of real value because I'm still learning the platform. And also, what comes with that as well is like not just the platform, but the UI and how to use it and the framing and that sort of thing, which is for a lot of people is important. For you, you're doing this for years and years and years, but for people new to just the application, it can feel like tough to get in, let alone pay for it all.
Yeah, and you mentioned time, it's like in a lot of cases, you're not going to have a client might need this in 3 days. So you don't have that
Right.
time to play around. You're sweating there as it
Yeah.
is. You're trying to produce something quickly. You just need to know it works. And you're going to go back to that thing that you know it works. So it's like, okay, you needed 3 days. I'm going to send a camera crew or I'm going to go out and do it.
Right,
You
right.
just come back and edit and it's going to be done. I think though the one thing that AI does, and this is kind of what I mentioned when I put the trailer up, is it allows you to do things like for a budget that you can never afford, or like
Right.
just to create that whole video. Like I could never, I'd be hiring so many people to go out and do
Right.
that, animatronics, the whole
Sure.
9 yards, right? That could just never happen. I think that's the beauty of the AI is you can get to see what's in images. You get to see what's in people's minds. Maybe it's a way to use between the client and yourself to kind of shape an idea.
Yeah.
That type
Well,
of
I
thing.
think, and I think that's important for marketers too. I've talked to a couple agency presidents here and of different, levels of production. And, agencies are absolutely using it for more advanced storyboarding or conceptual discussions about branding issues or like doing a series of spots and like kind of fleshing out what they may look like without just doing issue drawings and that sort of thing, you
Mhm.
know? So, all right. Well, listen, this has been fascinating. We've already chewed up an hour. What's next? Like, what are you interested in doing in the next year?
Yeah, so part of yeah, well, hoping to be able to turn some of this into actual production work.
Sure.
So,
Yes.
getting out there in front of people, So I'm still experimenting with many different things. I use there's a bunch of celebrities that some of my clients use, and I've done commercial work and stuff like that with them. But I really, for people, I'd highlight, before you're gonna go and do any of this stuff, talk to your clients about this, because make sure that they have AI rights with
Yeah.
these people, and that's a huge thing. Just already
Yeah.
you're seeing that. That's just a whole other game that needs to be kind of discussed, and it's even for yourself, controlling your own image. If you start putting your stuff into a program, you better be prepared that, they might end up somewhere and other people are using it, right? So
I saw a platform demoed like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and they were using Ed Sheeran. It was a commercial spot, and they were dubbing him in different languages, but the AI was regenerating the video. Honestly, Paul, it was jaw-dropping. I mean, Mandarin, Portuguese, like, like Ed Sheeran saying these things and you could not determine that it was not him. You know what I mean? It was completely and utterly believable.
yeah, I don't know if you've seen the series Money Heist on Netflix.
No,
I really wonder about that because it was originally shot in Spanish, is my understanding. But I
right?
just watched the whole English version of it, so I'm wondering if they used kind of the lip sync technology of AI to create that because it's
I forget the
fascinating.
platform. I forget the platform name, but they're Toronto-based, the demo that I saw. LibDub, I think LibDub. Anyway, the caveat there was, and not surprisingly, that it was compute extensive. Like it was very computationally intensive. But if you're a big studio and you're trying to, or think of it, for example, if you're a media company, newspapers, magazines, or a media company in general, to be able to create, Russian, Ukrainian versions, Mandarin versions. There's banks in the Toronto area that I've worked on projects to do, Chinese translation stuff. That opens up a whole nother, area of production.
For sure, for sure, and I think that's one of the biggest areas where I think maybe like my first use with clients will be is kind of with avatars. uh,
Yes,
creating our own avatars, our ultimate spokesperson type of thing.
right.
And the beauty of it is just like, once you have that, is
Yeah,
just you have a script and it just goes ahead and does it. They want to make a last minute change.
yeah.
It's not like you have to recall anybody back in. You just change the script and it's there. It's done, right?
And
It's
there's
just,
there's no hair and makeup either,
yeah.
Paul.
And
I mean,
so,
the and also some of them are pretty sterile and kind of creepy looking,
yeah.
but that's going to change.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, so I spent a lot of time already with creating one for a client that they haven't seen it yet, but we're going there with it.
Right,
But it's just, I created kind of what I think is going to kind of be their ultimate avatar, and I created it on a green screen.
right.
So, and then populated and lip synced it all through application. So I think, if you can do that kind of do that whole process and keep continuity,
Yeah,
then you have something really wonderful.
yes. And also, obviously, it makes business sense for a lot of purposes, right?
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right. Well, we're gonna call it quits. Thank you so much for this. It's been great. We'll post the recording in the next day or so, and thank you so much. Keep us appraised. Keep visiting the site and posting when you can. And thanks again, Paul, for talking to us today.
Well, I really appreciate the time. It's been great talking to everybody. And if they have more questions, I'm around. Reach out, talk to us. Post things on the site. It's always great getting new information from you guys when you will post it up there. So it's
Thanks.
been fun.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.